This is part 2 of session Z. Do you notice that I'm not angry? Well, I'm kind of angry, but we're going to try to get rolling here again with, it's a perfect way to finish this series. I'm stalling until we get at least one comment here to see if we're actually functional here, but welcome back. Hello, John. Thank you. John, would you mind, and a couple of you, would you mind going back and helping people find this new stream? So it is. I'll stall here for a few minutes until we get people back. But this is a fitting way to finish all of these 2020 live streams. It's been a huge learning curve for me, almost more technology-wise than geology-wise. And here we are in the last session, and the stream failed again. So I don't know, we were almost an hour into the first one. So this will be a two-parter. This will be session Z, part 1 will stay, and then we'll just have to use this second stream. That's fine. We'll just have this. I've got another, I don't know, who knows? I got another 20 minutes at least. So we can't end where we were. So we're up to 225 people, and I know that many of you are good-hearted people, and you'll go back and tell them that we are here, and we will assume that we can make this work. So if you're catching this one and you didn't see part 1, please go back and find Putting It All Together, Session Z, part 1, which is almost an hour long. And this is a continuation, and I'm going to wait another 5 minutes or so until we can get everybody back. Can you tell me how many did we have over there before the stream failed, so I can get a sense of if we can proceed, if we have most everybody there. My question is, there's a little bit of delay here, did anybody notice how many people we had in the first part of the show? Over 1,000, Judy? Oh, wow, we had more than 1,000, no kidding. Thank you, Patrick. Wow, okay, so I'm going to wait then, I guess, a few minutes until we have, I don't know, what number should I pick? Wait until we can get over 800? I guess if there are 1,000 people truly in live, real time with us, then we'll try to get as many. I see we're over 400 now, so. Yeah, a couple of you are helping back at the other stream, and I'm sure I'm still streaming at the old whatever. I'll never figure that out, but I promise I won't get grouchy. It's the last show. I can't be grouchy. I just have to roll with it. And if there needs to be a part 3, hell, if there needs to be part 17, because there's 17 failures of the stream, that's what we'll do. I want to finish this out. This will give me a second to get myself reorganized. So we're almost up to 500. I'll wait another few minutes, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of holding on, and you can, if nothing else, just let me know when we get over 800, if we can get most of the people over to this new stream. All right, we're getting there. Let me do one thing with you while we're waiting for everybody to find us. You remember the whole reason for doing this exotic terrain series is to teach myself this material so that I can understand what the research team is doing. Mike Eddy, Stacia Gordon, and Bob Miller. I was going to share this with you at the end, but let's do it now, just for something to do while we're waiting for everybody to get rolling here. I want to remind you and read to you the plan for the next few summers with the Mike Eddy research team in the North Cascades. And it makes more sense to me, and possibly to you too, since we've made our way through most of the alphabet here. Nick, looking forward to this coming summer of 2021. This is Mike Eddy writing by email. We will largely be focused on the late Cretaceous through the Eocene. So even though you and I have been doing our homework on stuff happening up to the mid-Cretaceous from the main event and intermontane and insular and other things, and the main event 100 million years ago, Mike says we're going to start with the group that I'm part of. We're going to start in the late Cretaceous and go into the Eocene. So I'm guessing that's roughly like 80 million years ago until, what, 30 million years ago possibly, something like that. Major plutons included in the suite are late Cretaceous plutons, Eniot pluton, cardinal peak pluton, and oval peak pluton. And younger than that, plutons in the Eocene, younger than 50 million years ago, the Golden Horn pluton, the Cooper Mountain, the Railroad Creek, and the Duncan Hill plutons. We will be thinking about the timing of emplacement of these plutons, along with exhumation of the Skagit Gneiss complex and motion on some of the major faults in the area. But we will be east of the Straight Creek Fault throughout this entire study. So the Skagit Gneiss and Ross Lake Fault Zone are likely key areas for this aspect of the study. Stacia Gordon will very likely be spearheading work in the Skagit Gneiss. That's the one that went down the geologic elevator and came back up and had all the sediment being shoveled into it. And focusing on its exhumation history. Bob Miller will likely be focused on the Ross Lake Fault Zone's movement history. We didn't talk a lot about the Ross Lake, but it's a major strike-slip fault. And I, Mike Eddy, will be sampling the plutons to generate high-resolution record of magmatism through these periods. Now, maybe I'll be a thorn in their side, and I keep saying, what about Karn and Mitch, and what about... Because I don't know how much they'll be tuned into that work or if they'll value that work, but I value that work, and that's what I'm trying to do here. We have 720 now. I think I'm going to proceed. Yeah, thank you. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm half expecting these crashes. My God, I do the whole testing thing and like the test before you start to show the upload rate and the download rate, and the numbers are just crazy good. And I'm inside. The freaking modem's like right over there. Out of my control. Okay. So we have 730 people, and I hope a few more trickle in. I'm sorry, that means we have more than 300 people who I guess will only be able to watch this on replay. They can't find us, or maybe they've had enough. I don't know, but I got to proceed, and I'm sorry that we had that break, but I don't know why I'm apologizing. So I do want to revisit, thanks to John's email and Andy Miner's email, and they're tipping me off that stuff down in the lower mantle, which used to be crust up in the ocean floor, this is a new way to reconstruct where those spreading centers used to be, and therefore, perhaps the significant, perhaps a brand new way for us to reconstruct those spreading centers out in the water, which is a huge part of the story. So just to get us back into it, yes, there's now this wonderful, not only imagery, but data that shows the Juan de Fuca plate subducting and continuing all the way down, and that is the old Farallon plate, a much different story than what we've been focused on. Just trying to remind you of what we did back in the Karin Siglock show. But these slab walls that are hanging there way, way down below North America, the biggest slab wall underneath the east coast of North America, it cannot be the Farallon plate. And up until Karin's work, starting 10 years ago, everybody assumed that this slab wall in the lower mantle was the old Farallon plate that subducted eastward. She says this has to be the old ocean floor between intermontane and insular that subducted westward into a fixed subduction zone. Now, you've heard the words a number of times, but I have a new way to show you what I mean by that. And I had to write it out and draw it out for myself to make it work. Part 2, session Z, actually. Earth poop. Okay, Rick. All right. Remember, I like walls of frozen yogurt falling vertically underneath a trench and then piling up. I mentioned Basil Tikoff from the University of Wisconsin, who's been a major help with much of what I've been doing the last 5 years by email and Zoom last week. And Basil said, he said, you're not going to believe this, but when I first read Karn Siglock's poop piles in the lower mantle, sorry, Patrick, thank you, Rick, colorful poop piles, frozen yogurt piles, Basil said, I was sitting there in the Los Angeles airport, LAX, and one of the murals in LAX was this. Basil says, I'm not making this up. I'm like reading this paper with these kinds of diagrams. I look up and I see this mural in the airport in Los Angeles. Like, what are the odds? Like, it's meant to be. Or now I'm adding. So that's kind of a fun little thing. So if I'm losing you, we're almost 800 now, good. If I'm losing you, there's kind of this is from I showed you a month and a half ago, the old idea of a massive Farallon plate coming at North America and subducting beneath North America, and then this idea of where is this spreading ridge between Kula and Farallon. I hate to say it this way, but I think I am. Is even Michael Eddy and a few others thinking about this with the old ideas? Meaning not using this tomography. If you use the tomography, the Kula is not a major player. It is the Orcus, which is also moving northward. So there's another northward moving magic carpet ride. And this is what I try to want to explore with you with a couple of custom Sharpie marking pens that I've put together last night before I hit the sack. Okay? So not to go back, you'll have to go back to the Karn Siglock show to see all the background on this, but they used the lower mantle to find these beautiful fixed trenches out in the water before the insular superterrane gets accreted. Let's just say it that way. And yes, they're hovering up above the East Coast and looking obliquely down through North America to this major slab wall underneath the East Coast of North America, and then the Cascade root slab as well. And so you have these two guys, this thing that's not connected to anything, this guy, which is the subducted Farallon more recently. The main thing I wanted to do for you is to get the timing of this, which I didn't have when I did this a month and a half ago. So I went through this and I watched that Clinette movie, which we will do in the Cozy Fort, God willing, in a few minutes. And we will see how they're taking these discoveries in the lower mantle and helping us understand what we have up here on the surface. Skipping ahead. Fixed Rangelia. Subduction, and you've got this stuff piled up immediately underneath. I didn't hit that hard enough last time. These frozen yogurt piles are immediately underneath the fixed ocean trench. And that's what these guys are saying. You don't have to guess where the spreading ridges are anymore. You don't have to guess where the ocean trenches were. We've got the stuff that came into the subduction zone and all that ocean crust we were destroying on the kitchen table, and here it is. And it hasn't moved since that time. So if you move these continents back to where they were at a particular time frame and restore everything, you can find those old ocean trenches. So I showed you these, and it's too much. It was too much for me 170 million years ago. So they're showing the trenches basically, they're showing the 3D imagery, they're showing these plates that they have created, 170, 140, and you're like, slow down. Well, I'm not going to slow down because this wasn't working for me. It was too much. I couldn't do it. But you know what I can sometimes do effectively, not always, but sometimes I can simplify and still stay true to what I think the major messages are, and I can maybe get it across. We're 850 now. Good. I'm glad most of you are found us again. I remember doing this with you in the Car and Siglock show, and I had about the same kind of detail as I do right now. Well, here's what I have that really helped me last night and possibly will help you too. And I feel like, if nothing else, it tells you where we are, at least from one major research group from University of Oxford in England, ironically, dealing with what stuff happening in the Eastern Pacific, where we are right now in 2020. And will this change in the future? Of course it will. This continues, it's a mystery novel. We continue to try to, follow all the clues and finally get to the point where who killed the whatever and the whatever. Okay, so it's me now with my Sharpie marking pens. This is the old idea that I've taught forever. This is the actual piece of paper, but I added some things from a month and a half ago. Westward moving North America. Therefore, a trench, and the black triangles, remember, show the direction that the trench is slanting into the ground. So this is eastward subduction. Fixed spreading ridge out in the water. This is the old idea that really nobody believes anymore. Nobody believes anymore. And all you need to do is move North America closer and closer and closer and closer to this fixed East Pacific rise. And as you do that, the position of this trench drifts with the leading edge of North America. You have eastward subduction the entire way. This is the last 200 million years of time. And as you do that, you accrete these two huge super potatoes onto your windshield. Oh yeah, there's the surfboard with the Cache Creek down the middle. This is Quinelli and Stakenia, and they all come in and they get added 170 million years ago. Ka-chunk onto the windshield. Continue the old idea. And here's the insular superterrane with Wrangellia and Alexander, which was some Northern European immigrants, etc. That thing's going to be accreted 100 million years ago. And then you finally cross much of the East Pacific rise. Now that's ignoring the spreading center that is being subducted, correct? That's not talking about the Kula Plate at all, correct? That's not talking about Baja, BC at all, correct? This is as simple as you get, and yet from the late 1960s until, I don't know, college classrooms like my college classroom until last year, I was teaching this. Well, I've changed my teaching because I'm finally up to speed on what's going on. And I will continue to change my teaching as we continue to learn more and more. So what do the new ideas look like that not everybody totally agrees with? This is the way for me to synthesize what Karen Siglock's group is now seeing. Between remember, they start 170, so we've already accreted intermontane. They don't have the resolution in the lower mantle to know much about the details there. So they're starting their story, and in the Cozy Fort, they'll start the movie 170 million years ago. And we're going to look at that thing backwards and forwards a few times. But there's Quinellia, Cache Creek, Stakenia. They have accreted already, probably eastward subduction, but let's not get hung up on it. Yeah, we're moving North America, but we're not just moving North America. Notice that the plate boundary is here. Notice that we have westward subduction here, right off the coast of Insular. Therefore, this is fixed. And Insular is fixed. Now, this is a big old hot dog, but wasn't this a big oceanic plateau? Yes. I don't totally get why it's drawn like a kielbasa. That's confusing because these are not I don't get why it's a big hot dog. But regardless, we have our Insular looking like this in Karen's movies. But the key concept is this ocean floor, with all that ocean green rock, is moving with North America. This whole thing is moving. There is no trench here. We're not drifting the trench like we were with the old idea. The new idea says, are these the same orientation? Yes. Old idea, new idea. The new idea says, drift everything, ocean crust and continent, and have westward subduction into a fixed ocean trench. That works much better with the position of that slab wall, which today is underneath the east coast of North America because all North America has drifted over this entire ocean trench. Now, interestingly, there's also another trench that they have in their animations that's on the opposite side of insular. So we do have eastward and westward subduction at the same time. Does that mean the frozen yogurt is a combination of consuming this ocean floor and this ocean floor? I'm not sure. Now, there's an interesting twist that during this time of this general picture going on between 170 and 152, we're going to take the insular. This is brand new from Clenette's paper 2020. By the way, it's a master's thesis. And as I understand it, his whole product from his master's thesis is a movie, is an animation. They needed a movie. So this kid made an animation for his master's thesis. Again, we'll look at it in the Cozy Fort. But one of the brand new things from his movie is that we're going to split insular. We're going to break it in half. Break the hot dog in half, bro. 162 million years ago. While all this is going on, westward subduction, eastward subduction, consuming ocean floor, their model to explain what? An ophiolite with an east-west trending spreading ridge. What is this? This scientific paper with an animation from Oxford, England, talking about the Northeast Pacific, talking about major tectonic plates, is highlighting the serpentinite that's 30 miles to the north of this living room. The Ingalls ophiolite and the Josephine ophiolite, same thing. So that is satisfying to me to have something that's always bothered me just right over there that's part of this brand new work. And it's fun to basically find a neighbor, an actual neighbor in Kittitas County that's part of this grand story. So I think that's a temporary thing. You'll see it in the movie. And then, I don't know, it comes back together or whatever. I don't know. But we want to finish our story, don't we? This is the latest and very intoxicating set of ideas from this tomography work. So we're to 152. We still have westward subduction. No, 125. I read that backwards. 125. So do we keep going with westward subduction? Do they have westward subduction for their whole model? They do not. They flip back to eastward subduction, and they have eastward subduction of ocean plate material from 152 basically till present day-ish. And so this is after the main event. Again, I mentioned this to you before, but I'll mention it to you again right now. They do not have the main event at 100 million years ago. They have it 25 million years earlier. I don't know how to reconcile those two things. But by now we have accreted, insular, and even green, which is the Chugach from last show. All assembled now. The fruitcake is mostly assembled with an ocean plate. And then 70 million years ago, according to their animation, we stopped the subduction for a time. the eastward subduction, and we have things set up with the spreading ridge to the south, and it's their Orcus plate that is the magic carpet ride to the north. So I think it's time to go in the cozy fort. Hang on just a second. This is probably your only time to visit with Bijou today, and he wants to say thank you for watching, and it's been really fun to have you all here at the house for all these live shows. If you go way back to the first test that I did in mid-March, where I turned on the phone for the first time and saw that I could live stream, Bijou was in that one, sitting on the wall in the backyard. So he's been part of the show the whole time, haven't you? And it's so wonderful. Oh, good, we have more than 900 people here. So we got most everybody back, and that's a wonderful thing. So, did you want to say anything to these guys? Did you want to say anything to these guys? Give me just a second before we go on the cozy fort, see if I have anything left. I got a nice email from Gene Keever. Got some more nice emails with kind of reflections of how far we've come since they were learning geology in the 1950s, the 1960s, and early 1970s. And thank you for that. I was going to share some of that, but I don't think I will. I do want to share this, though. This whole business of having an archipelago offshore and having westward subduction is not a new idea. And I've meant to do more with Eldridge Moores from UC Davis, University of California, Davis. And he tells famously a story about sitting in a conference with Bill Dickinson and just having all these light bulbs go off in the late 1960s about how to deal with ophiolites and have the ophiolites tell a major story about tectonic plates in the American West. And so I'm just sharing these papers with you because Eldridge should be recognized here as being way ahead of his time if this current train of thought of archipelago off the coast of North America as opposed to a simple Farallon plate. These papers are telling this story, and their diagrams are very similar to what we have now with the tomography, but he's got diagrams, I should show you. He's got diagrams that are exactly like this 20, 30, 40 years ago. Eldridge Moores. I've mentioned him before, but I was going to do a full show on him, but I just kind of ran out of letters. But if you're wanting to see somebody who was on top of his game for most of his career, thinking creatively and thinking against the grain, and it's starting to look like he may have been on to the story long before many of us, he should be recognized. And speaking of that, Bob Hildebrand, who I mentioned a little bit with the slab failure model, do you recall? And I shared some of these papers from Robert Hildebrand. Bob got wind that we were doing these shows. I don't know if he's watched any of them, but he got wind of it. And he said, I got a brand new paper that's about to come out. It's not in press yet. But it's focused specifically on the peninsular ranges. You know, each of his papers are more than 100 pages long and chock full of all of these very sexy diagrams. So Bob emailed me his newest work, and I'll be looking forward to it. But I noticed in his, I guess in his conclusions, he said this. Eldridge, this is for you. So Hildebrand, Siglock, a number of other folks have been taking the ideas of Eldridge Moore's from 50 years ago and working with them. Okay, that's enough. Let's go to the Cozy Fort. And 930. Okay, so I guess we're all experienced with this now about failures. And as I get ready for more live streams in the future, again, no promises. For all I know, I'll be bored out of my mind in January. We'll be back at it, or maybe I'll be very into something else and we won't do live streams till next summer or whatever. I don't know. And I guess I don't have to promise, do I? Except I want to keep this going in a certain way for this community. My point is, I want to continue prepping for the North Cascades work. So I almost certainly will do another live stream at some point, probably in 2021, on the Eocene, on what's going on in the Pacific Northwest in the last 50 million years. That's almost a for sure. But I need to think hard about what I want to do, when I want to do it, and I think I need to explore more about this technology. Because if there's a, hang on. This Cozy Fort by Steve really works, man. I forgot how dark it gets in here. Hey, I can't keep doing these things and have the stream fail, 2 out of 3 times. So I need to learn more. I need to learn more about options that I have here and maybe buy some new equipment, or I don't know what. But we need to fix that. Give me a second, would you? I got to find our second stream here. What do I do? Go to Nick Zentner's. Oh. How do I find this thing? How did you find this thing? Where do I go? Oh, here. Part due. Oh, that's clever. Okay, 925 are watching. Okay, I've got us now. We have no sound that we need in the Cozy Fort. Okay, so Eric and Jay down in Sacramento came up with this yesterday and sent it like a big old Zorro Z. So thanks, fellas. That's kind of fun. This is the Zend. And Bernadette from Everett, Washington, is fond of heart-shaped rocks and thought that she would share her collection of heart-shaped rocks, 26 photos for our 26 exotic terrain shows. That's Bernadette's shoe, I believe. Not in Washington. Heart-shaped box, yeah, Nirvana, nice, okay. So Bernadette, thank you for putting these together. I know you had some other heartfelt comments, but I'm a little skittish about that. If I do too much of that, it sounds like I'm just in love with myself, and we don't need that. So I'm just sharing your nice collection of slides here, and I think I'm just gonna stop with that. Hope you can understand that. So if nothing else, you can kind of enjoy Bernadette's photos and also remember each of the sessions we've had this fall. I appreciate you taking the time to put this together, Bernadette. Still have that bleached look. There's that shoe again. Ah, Mount Stewart at Ingalls Lake with the serpentinite of the Ingalls ophiolite in the foreground. And this is us today with a broken stream. Perfect. Includes bijou. Thank you, Bernadette. And thank you to Patrick, who sent this last night. Patrick, age 7, who's been with us since the start. And that's Patrick, age 7, and Nick, age 58, standing on Cache Creek. Thank you, Patrick. I love you. We're going to get to the movie from Karin's group, but this is a little slideshow that I put together. I just grabbed 26 of Backcountry Gary's photos that I liked, and I put it on a little timed slideshow thing. And I'll just let this play, and we can enjoy with a nice dark room a major contribution to our series by Backcountry Gary. You've seen all these before. There's Gary. Thank you, Gary. I think without these photos from Gary, which he labeled carefully for us each time, without these photos, oh God, I love that shot. Without these photos, I don't think the majesty of the North Cascades is recognized. Like, we're not talking about some godforsaken place where we're doing this geology. And so there's an advantage of thinking about all this fun stuff academically. It keeps you alive mentally, but then it also keeps you alive physically if you're trying to do all this work in a place like this. Powell in Poland says this looks terrifying. I have the opposite reaction. I wish I was up there right now, Powell. And those of us that have some background and some experience in the high mountains know that it's a very special place. So it's all about comfort. Much of this is about comfort. Comfort intellectually and comfort physically, but places like this become old friends to you if you have some confidence and experience in these places. This is all the North Cascades, which is, of course, just a portion of the terrain that we're talking about, no pun intended, this fall. So thank you very much to Gary from Darrington, Washington, yet again. And we finished, no, do we? So I have 2 animations to show you. This from Ivana, who has this as an unlisted portion of his YouTube channel. I think he prefers it to stay unlisted. That's totally fine. But this is from Karin Siglock's research group 6 years ago. And I like it most because it shows our fixed insular. I'll try to, I don't think I can. That's insular, fixed trench. And here comes, we got dates. Here comes the main event, which they also have at 100, oh, that's the same, right. 125 is where they like that main event. Again, this is 6 years old from a Henderson master's project, maybe PhD project, not sure. And this is not the most current movie that they have. but it obviously shows Baja, BC happening, but it's almost like an afterthought compared to all the rest of the stuff going on. Let me show that to you again. We're not looking at ocean plates now. We're not looking at subducting spreading ridges. They're taking their lower mantle ocean slabs, their slab walls, and they are reconstructing positions in the Pacific. I keep forgetting to show you the timing here. So will we all look back on this in 20 years and laugh? Probably. You know how this works. Each time that you're currently thinking about things, you assume that you've solved it. But you know that that's not the message here, and it should never be the message with science. It should never be the message of science. And that's something I fight all the time. I've got people on the street who are saying, well, you guys just said such and such, and now you got a different answer, and so obviously you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, we have a different story because we have new information that's come in. That's the exciting part of science, but I've said that a number of times. This is the last thing we'll look at in the Cozy Fort, and then I guess we'll do some live Q&A. Why not? Edward Clinette. I think you can find this online. If you can't, we've had, is it Eldrith or Idrith has been really good about posting links in the comments below on some of these YouTube sessions. And so this is a downloaded MOV file that I've used, and I've got this on a loop. So I'm going to play this. I'm going to let this run for, I don't know, a few cycles, basically. We're going to have it go forward, and then it's going to kind of herky-jerk go back in time, and then it's going to go forward again, just with one button here. So I'll try to keep my mouth shut the first time through. And now we'll go backwards. I don't know why it doesn't play smoothly backwards, but whatever. And let me try to narrate just a little bit. This is Edward Clinette, master's student. I think he's now getting a PhD at Austin, Texas. And I thought about emailing him last night, but I thought it was doubtful that he'd have time to reply to me right away. But I'd like to connect with him. And I'm reminding you now, maybe I can point out just a couple of things. Obviously, this is insular. That's intermontane. They collide, and notice that it's kind of a closing of the north before they close the south. But I don't know how many times I played this and replayed it last night as I was making my little cartoons, trying to figure out when do they have the westward subduction? When do they shut it off? When do they go eastward subduction? And again, that is the Orcus plate. I'll wait for a third time, and the final time, I guess, to put that together for you. But there's lots going on here, and you could play this back and forth if you haven't already multiple times to really they've got a lot packed into this, including the Ingalls ophiolite. I've avoided, have you noticed, the Franciscan complex in California? They've got a very creative way to get some of the Franciscan and parts of the Great Valley into this story. I don't think I'll point it out because I don't still totally get it in my head. But I think the last thing I want to show is that look at the different ocean plates that they have based on the stuff they have in the lower mantle. They don't have a major Farallon, but they also don't just simply have a Kula and a Farallon in the Pacific. They've got the Orcus. This is the Orcus that now is viewed as the resurrection that they have found in the subsurface. Orcus, I'm keeping my finger on the Orcus plate. And they're going to swing at the beginning of Baja, BC. They're going to get the Orcus. There we go. The Orcus is the magic carpet ride for Baja, BC, not the Kula, according to Karin Siglock's group in Oxford. And Ivana and a couple others have pointed out they don't really have Siletzia on this thing. I don't know if that's an oversight or what the story is there, but I think that's the Yakutat. Oh, it's going backwards now. So that's what I wanted to show you. 10:45, of course it's a long one. Let's do some live question and answer and wrap things up. Woo! Let's see if Bijou's around as well. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, John Stockton, who's been watching this show. Thank you, Jim Mattis, former Defense Secretary, who's been watching the show. You know, I mentioned that I went out, that I met Jim Mattis earlier in September. It was more than that. I went on a little field trip, he and his family. And I mentioned that because I was with both of Jim's brothers and other family members, wives, etc. And we were talking about the popularity of this show. And I was like, I can't believe how many people are watching, especially people who are like, have never been here and now probably never will be in North America. And it was one of Jim Mattis's brothers that said something that I hadn't thought about before. Maybe you agree. He said, I think what is working is that people are in awe and they kind of have a sense of wonder of all these things that happened so long ago. And maybe also a little bit of awe at how people today can learn anything about things that happened that long ago. But just that theme, I've forgotten your name, I'm sorry, Mr. Mattis. That theme that people maybe for centuries always had a sense of awe and wonder and grandeur and some sort of religious life they had, and maybe that's not part of their life as much anymore. And so this is almost another way to tap into something much bigger and broader and grander. I hadn't really thought about that at all, but I thought it was an interesting comment, thought I'd share it with you. And name drop things as well, obviously. So uppercase with a couple of final questions, and then we can talk about the future before we quit. The device 9, does the major trauma of accreting big igneous provinces help explain the very rapid rise of deep mantle rock into the surface? Excellent question, as they all are. We definitely have this upper mantle material getting to the surface. And I think it's most traditionally viewed as a ocean basin spreading center story. And so is that really tied to creating a large igneous province? I'm not so sure those go together in my mind. But what does go together in my mind is this incredible down the geologic elevator, getting metamorphic equivalents, and then getting the stuff back up. That seems to be more the trauma that comes to mind. Oh, we got somebody screwing around with the gifts. So that, to me, is a tie, and there's probably some mantle involved in that. But it's an excellent question that I don't think I have a great answer for, so I should stop talking. Lars, is the Yellowstone hotspot potentially just a subducted spreading ridge? Thank you. These are all interesting. I don't have all the papers handy. I think it's still difficult to pinpoint where the Yellowstone hotspot was out in the Pacific, if it was out in the Pacific, if it does have that long-lasting history. And it's tempting, isn't it, to put the Yellowstone hotspot right at that spreading ridge between the Kula and the Farallon, or the new idea between the Farallon and the Orcas plate. Or if you want to get real greedy, how about you put the Yellowstone hotspot at the triple junction where you have 3 ocean plates in contact with each other? Is that a thing? Well, you can go back and say, I don't think we have, look at the ocean triple junctions we have today. We don't have any hotspots at those. So it's an interesting idea. Probably challenging to put that together. Gary, another Gary. Olympia Gary. Could the frozen yogurt piles be responsible for Cenozoic uplift in the southern Appalachians? The deep slab beneath the east coast of North America is way down there, deeper than 100 kilometers depth. As I view it, Gary, that's got nothing to do with what's going on recently on the East Coast. And of course, the uplift of the Appalachians. Is there Cenozoic uplift in the southern Appalachians? I guess you're telling me something that I don't know about. If there's active uplift right now in the southern Appalachians, what's going on there? I can't imagine there's a connection to that stuff in the lower mantle, but I guess it's possible. A few more. Chuck, does the interplay of the North American plate and the spreading account for the clockwise rotation? Generally, yes, Chuck, but I think more specifically we view, why not? The old standbys we've used all spring as well. Here's the poster that Patrick gave me of today's situation and the subduction of the Juan de Fuca plate coming away from the spreading ridge. This is real. This is not an idea now. We know all of this. And this is Cynthia Shaw in Tri-Cities, Washington, who made this with a major assist from Steve Riddell in the Tri-Cities. I think they undersold Silesia, by the way. We have looked at images from Ray Wells that Silesia is a majority of this. This is a subducted oceanic plateau, not just a little ribbon. But I'm nitpicking now. This is what we know today. But this really does work with so many different groups. This clockwise rotation that was first documented by Merle Beck and Tanya Atwater and has been embellished upon by Ray Wells and others. What is driving this thing? Most view that it's the combination of the present plate vectors of the Juan de Fuca plate and the Pacific plate that are grabbing hold of these two subblocks and rotating around the Euler pole at Spokane and Pendleton and other places. Each block having its own Euler pole. Thank you, Glenn. But this is not the ocean plate configuration going back tens of millions of years. We've already made that point. So why was there rotation with different ocean plates nearby? Maybe that's what you're getting at here. I don't think I gave you an answer, but I tried to run with it a little bit. Scott, could the subduction of the spreading ridge be the explanation of, same question. Thank you. What are my thoughts about craters of the moon? Mark, would slab failure result in the geologic elevator? So Mark likes Hildebrand's idea of slab failure, which I haven't really folded into this much. But would the timing of a slab failure related to closing of an ocean basin be directly tied to this geologic up and down in the elevator? I think that's probably what the Mike Eddy group is going to be continuing to work on. The timing, well, they already have some significant timing, but plugging it into a bigger story would be an exciting part of this. One more, and then I've got a couple thoughts to wrap things up. HHC Wasa. Could it be possible the spreading ridge creating a new island arc to be accreted to our Pacific coastline in the future? That's Hugh in Puyallup. Thank you, Hugh. That's how we'll finish. Well, we have bathymetric maps. We know that the Pacific plate dominates today, and the Pacific plate is heading to the northeast. And that's our time on the planet, right? We're given the Pacific Ocean basin, and it's a time when we have a monster ocean plate, the Pacific plate, that's heading towards the northwest, Japan, the Aleutians. And so future terrain accretion will be out there. But that said, the Pacific plate's going northwest, but who's coming in from the right frame here and drifting to the north? Who's coming in from the northeast and drifting to the southwest? Us, the North American plate. And so are we done with accretion? Generally, the answer is yes. Could the spreading ridge create a new island arc to be accreted to our... See, I would change that slightly, Hugh. Our spreading ridges are not creating island arcs. Our spreading ridges are creating these basaltic ridges, piles of basalt, and we keep spreading that material away. The island arcs are definitely a subduction story. So I think that's how I'll answer the question. It does not look currently, or even in the immediate future, that we will have a new subduction zone getting established offshore somewhere. Therefore, I don't foresee, I don't foresee a new island arc being created offshore and then us slamming into it to have a repeat of what we've had in the past. But it's a really interesting thing to think about, and my spitballing doesn't mean that that's particularly accurate. A toast to you. This is a shout out to my grandpa Clyde John Zoya. This is one of his drinking glasses. So that's my mom's side of the family. There's a whole other, maybe in the next live stream we'll do some genealogy with the Zoya side of the family and going back to the stonecutters in northern Italy. But for now, we're going to... Ooh, you hear that? We're going to take this delectable mineral water from my dad's side of the family and pour it into this personal drinking glass of my other grandpa. And a remembrance of Mount Stewart, the Mount Stewart Pluton that is the most local and interesting part of the exotic terrain fruitcake that we've been studying this fall. Here's to your health. Gesundheit. Oh, there's a little lemon in there. I can see why this is popular up in Elm, Switzerland. Here's to the health of your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents. That's silly, but we want to think about all the people that came before us. Here's to them. And here's to our children, and our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren, and all the people who will come after our short time of the planet is done. Here's to everyone in your community, near and far, to their health. I want to thank you for joining us today, for joining us on Friday, for joining us the weekend before, for joining us back in September, for joining us in late June, for joining us in the first live stream back on St. Patrick's Day in mid-March. 2012, 2020, 2021, those are all years that will be written about, but it's 2020 that will be in the history books as an unusual year. And I will read about 2020 as well, God willing, and look back on 2020. And my first thought will not be the major storylines. My first thought will be you and what we were doing here with this exciting live stream series. Now I'm going to let this run for a couple more minutes. I'm going to go to try to find Bijou so he can say goodbye. But I'm going to also let this run just a few minutes because I would like to see your comments about what you'd like to see in the future. If you haven't already written, what would you like to see, whether it's a live stream series, whether it's recorded videos from the field, whether it's live sessions from the field, whether it's the most young 50 million years of time here in the Pacific Northwest, or you'd like to go in a different direction. You know that a benefit of this community is me learning so much from you, not only about technology, but learning about what would work with future projects. And so I'm very interested in what you might have to say about what you might want to see from this YouTube channel in 2021 and beyond. So I'm going to let this run. I'm going to go try to find Bijou. And thank you for all of your gifts in many forms this year. Mr. Bijou. Say goodbye. Say goodbye to these guys. I think we're both going to nap here. It's Sunday. And I will enjoy looking at your comments, and Bijou will enjoy reading your comments as well. So on behalf of Bijou the cat, and all the geologists who've contributed both near and far to this series, thank you, I love you, and goodbye. It's not the end, it's just the beginning. And we're going to reach for the X together. In fact, Bijou's going to reach for the X. Ready? Ready? We're going to reach for the X. Going to reach for the X. Oh, reach for the X. I'll help you. I'll help you. Attaboy.